Okay, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and thank you for joining us for another edition of our JOGL Africa Community Event Series. So the idea behind the JOGL Africa Community Event Series is to engage with members of our community, but also people undertaking various interesting projects in the area of open science and innovation. We are also interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, because we believe that these are tools that can advance development in Africa. And in addition to that, can empower people with the necessary skills and competencies that they can use to solve local problems in their communities. And so that's what JOGL is all about. Today, we are very privileged to have Dr. Sidy Ndao with us here. He's into many things, but principally he's one of the founders of Pan-African. He's a founder of Pan-African Robotics Competition. He's also the president and founder of Dakar American University of Science and Technology. And so this conversation is for us to really connect with Sidy, his work, his philosophy, and the goal of Pan-African Robotics Competition to scale robotics in Africa and therefore accelerate STEM education and sustainable impact in Africa. So we have a very powerful title for today's discussion, which is basically looking at making sustainable impact in Africa through robotics. So Sidy, thank you very much for joining us. Before we delve into the actual conversation, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into STEM and how you do what you do now?
Okay. Thanks so much for the kind introduction. It's actually a privilege of mine to be here and speaking to you guys. And actually, this is really the audience that I love the most to speak with. Because I hope that, you know, what we're going to learn from each other today would be beneficial for our respective countries and careers, and overall helping the continent move forward. So really excited about it, and you know, looking forward to having this conversation with you. And thanks, Ada, for helping us, you know, with this meeting as well. Well, so my background is in mechanical engineering. I studied in the US. I first studied in Senegal. I'm from Senegal. Then I went to the US and as a high school student, did a bachelor's and master's degree in mechanical engineering in New York, and went to upstate New York, did a PhD in mechanical engineering as well, with a primary focus on thermal fluid science and nanotechnology. Then I went to do a postdoc at MIT on nanosciences and thermal sciences. Then I was recruited to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in the US, where I spent about 10 years, almost 10 years as a faculty in the Department of Mechanical Material Engineering, working in different areas in mechanical engineering. All along, my passion has been, just as you guys, how do we give back to the continent? How do we uplift the continent? How do we come up with ways to make the lives of people in the continent better? So one of the ways that I've thought about it is through education, and I believe we do share this common interest, all of us. And how can education can help the continent be where it needs to be and uplift its people. So that's how I got into this enterprise of education, hence the Pan-African Robotics Competition, among other programs such as the Dakar American University of Science and Technology.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So when we are talking about robotics, you know, usually we have this fanciful construction of devices that are like highly advanced in nature, and some people have this conception that, you know, robots are going to take over the world and destroy human civilization. So they are not so comfortable with the subject of robotics. What would you say to these people, and how would you like explain robotics like at the most fundamental level for anybody to understand?
Okay, so I think you asked earlier in your question that something I forgot to answer, which is PARC. So as you said, I'm the founder of the Pan-African Robotics Competition. So PARC is really a program, a youth program that brings together African youth and African teams to compete on robotic challenges around themes that are relevant to the sustainable development of the continent. For example, in the previous years, we've had teams around agriculture, made in Africa, sustainable impact, and so on. And then we would ask the different teams in various countries to develop robotic solution for those for the specific challenges, and they would spend about 3 months on their various countries and work on the robotics challenge, and then they would meet at this grand finals where all the teams across the continent would come and then compete. So it's like a World Cup of robotics, to say so. Regarding robotics, then it may sound fancy, has a name, but it's just like any other field of study, you know. It's a field of study that's at the interface of mechanical engineering, computer science, electrical engineering, control science as well. And you know, building a robot could be as simple as being a cell phone, could be as complex as being a robot sent to Mars. It just has to meet certain conditions. That's at the interface of those different fields, and it's quite broad. Has a field though, and it's probably it'll take a long time to actually go into the nitty details. But you could think of it just as being an interface between those different fields.
Awesome, thank you very much. So today's discussion is about robotics and how it can be linked to sustainable development. So how can robotics really drive sustainable change or sustainable impact in Africa?
Well, again, this is just it's going to be a conversation, and my opinions, you know, it's as good as your opinion, anybody's opinion. So I'd like to hear what you guys think too. For me, when I think about, you know, robotics being, you know, having an impact on sustainable development of Africa, I like the way I like to pose the question, however, is how is knowledge itself, and then we could go into robotics. How is knowledge itself will drive sustainable impact in the continent? And the reason is because I would like to keep our eyes on the target, right? Which is knowledge. We have had we've lived and will continue to live in a knowledge-based economy, in a knowledge-based world where knowledge prowess is at the core of economic growth and economic development. However, this knowledge obviously can vary from one era to another era, and the type of knowledge rather can vary. An example I'd like to give you is the Industrial Revolution, which spanned from the 18th century to the 21st century. And across that period, knowledge has varied, and the focus of knowledge has varied over this period. For example, in the first Industrial Revolution, mechanization was most likely or probably the most important thing. Or how do you mechanize things? How do you, you know, use mechanical power to move things, to build things, and so on, right? At that time, then obviously mechanization is very important. Then we move on to a second industrial revolution where we focus primarily on mass productions, electricity start to come about, electrification of machines and so on. Then in the third industrial revolution, automation becomes important, right? Computers came about, softwares, and we start to automate rather systems. And in that period of time, you know, having skills in writing code as well as, you know, computer program writing, designing chips would matter, being able to control elevators, moving things, you know, or supply chains and so on. This would matter. And then in this 21st century is as what we like to think of this cyber-physical world, where we're blurring the line between the digital world and the mechanical world, hence robotics. And where you have that interface that I was discussing earlier, you know, anything computer science, whether it's computer vision, and then you are actually you know, mixing it or at least connecting it to the physical world, whether it be, you know, a tractor in the agriculture field, whether it be an elevator. But there is this connection between those two worlds, and it is very well exemplified through what's known as IoT, which is the Internet of Things, where you could communicate between those different worlds. So therefore, in this time that we are in, if we consider ourselves to be in the fourth industrial revolution, then robotics becomes something that matters. And the application of robotics has been seen across the world. And obviously, Africa has a lot to gain from it and learn from it. I'll give you a few examples. But before that, I just want to mention that, you know, looking forward into, let's say, what would be hopefully the fifth industrial revolution, which people believe to be really where we start to blur the line between the biological world, the physical and digital world, right? And then you have the whole area of neuroscience and neuroengineering, where you start to make materials that has biological characteristics and behaviors. So then when that comes, then obviously not so much robotics, but more of that field would become important. So the point I'm making here is the importance of that knowledge, right? And that we continue to grow and learn over the years and adapt to better control our environment and better living within our environment. Right? So going back to robotics, and obviously there are many examples that we could list where it could have a significant impact in Africa, whether it's in the area of infrastructure per se. One can imagine using robotics to build houses, to build buildings, right? Recently 3D printing for the past couple of years, 3D has become very important. And now more so because we could use 3D printing to print metal parts. So you could print steel parts, you could print composite parts that you could use for building skyscrapers, you could build houses and you name it. More so, you could even use 3D printing to build concrete. So you could build a whole house out of 3D printers, right? So this is one area where robotics matters, since the 3D printing technology is primarily based on the robotics, technology. And in employment, creating jobs. Typically, when you think of robotics, people might say, okay, that's taking away jobs. Actually, I would like to think of it as being something that creates jobs. In employment, for say, you could say like about a third of the population in the continent is in the informal sector, primarily in, let's say, in artisan people who work with woodworkers, metal workers, and even tailors and so on. How do we turn their skills into something that's profitable, something that becomes a profitable business for them? And robotics can play a great role in that through what's known as digital manufacturing. So instead of cutting your wood using the regular saw you had or the traditional methods that we know of, that we see around the country, in our countries, we could use machines that are based on robotics, whether this is CNC machines, whether it's lathe or automated systems. And likewise, we could say the same thing about health, through surgical robotics, through digitization of electronic records, through telepresence, rather telemedicine, where you could have consultation with do your checkups online with the doctor who may be far away from where you live. And likewise, in terms of education, which I work a lot with, we've recently found ways where you could do remote lab using robotics, whereby somebody could be at home and actually carrying out physical and chemical and biological labs using virtual reality and controlling those experiments with robotic arms and so on. And then finally, another example is through the environment, right? The environment matters. We know the effect of climate change. Being able to monitor the environment and see how it evolves with time, and being able to take measures to predictive measures, so that the environment is not affected by hazardous materials and things of that nature. They're having drones, whether it's aerial drones or underwater drones, matters. In one of the projects we're working on, we have underwater drones that we send in some of the conserved areas, water areas in Senegal, to study the behaviors of fish and to study their reproduction cycles, and to also make sure that they are not being, overcaught or overfished throughout the season. So what we do is we send those drones, and with the drones, which are equipped with camera, we're able to use machine learning and AI to classify the different fish that are there, hence allowing the authorities or the government's folks to be able to keep track of their marine resources. So this is just a few examples and there are many, many examples that one can actually name.
Oh, this is powerful and very fantastic. Yeah, JOGL, we are always excited if we can apply technology to solve everyday challenges. And I think that when you are talking and citing a lot of examples from the environmental science or environmental sustainability, then you are really touching my heart, because that's like one of the main topics that I personally love to work on. And I just remembered also, I posted the wrong link in the chat, but I'll get to the link in a moment. This idea of a robot cop in DR Congo, where you're talking about applications of robotics and how that can help society. And I mean, on a more serious note, I actually like your perspectives, because robotics then becomes a part of the suite of tools that we have in addressing challenges. So when we are talking of solving problems, it's not just robotics, but it's not just robotics as in like the products that we build or the tools that we build, but it's a way of thinking, and it's embedded within other technologies or other paradigms that are emerging. And with that seamless conception, it means that we can be ready to also figure out new kinds of solutions and to new challenges that come. So it's not like we are always thinking of things in a very linear manner. And I think that that is great. But I think that on the other hand, in Africa, yeah, I know people always, people are not always excited to talk about the problems that we face, but there are certainly lots of barriers that affect the quality of STEM education and access to STEM education. We've been talking a lot about this here in Ghana, and I'm sure the conversation likewise is going on in Senegal. So what do you perceive to be like some of the major barriers when it comes to STEM education in Africa, and what can be done, you know, to address these barriers? And at the same time, I want you to link your answer to moving from STEM education to actually to innovation, you know.
But I think there's an easy link between STEM education and innovation. I think of both as, you know, being very related. And so if you think of innovation, really is, in order for innovation to spark or to be able to flourish in a country or in an area, there are sets of conditions and requirements that needs to be met. And we like to think of those requirements as being the innovation ecosystem, right? And those would include entrepreneurship. They would include, you know, tariff, government regulations, you know, infrastructures, logistics, and market access, and so on. All those come together, create this, you know, innovation ecosystem. But at the heart of it, at the heart of this innovation ecosystem, I like to think of it being education and research and development. So those are some, you could see how these two are already tied together, right? So the challenges that we have in education and research and development are leading to the problems that we have in, you know, innovation ecosystem or innovation, you know, development in our respective countries. And so the challenge with education is huge, and you know, and it's not only within STEM education. Though STEM education has its own characteristics, requiring materials, labs, and the like. But we think we have a bigger challenge really in education, and I like to think of that challenge being a lack of a clear vision in what I like to call skills and, you know, wealth generation, skills education and wealth generation. Because regardless of how we think of education, ultimately the result of any education should lead to a better pay, new employment, or entrepreneurship. Yes, it's good and great to discuss, you know, the philosophical need to be intelligent and smart and being able to be articulate. Yes, there's no doubt about it. But ultimately, you would want, after an going through an education system, to be either have a better job, employment, or create new jobs yourself, right? So this applies for STEM education and otherwise STEM education. So that lack of vision or clarity is matter, and that clarity, there are a few things that needs to be there. One is that education needs to be very contextual, and this applies to STEM as well. It needs to be responsive and needs to be adaptive, right? So contextual in a sense that every country has their own context and every region has their own context and their needs in STEM, even within STEM, right? A country that's based on, you know, mining is different than a country that's based on, you know, agricultural base, you know, resources. So how do you teach STEM within those countries? Though it's important to have a better idea, but, you know, when it comes to engineering, one may put an emphasis on some areas rather than others. So the contextual in that way, but also contextual in the relevance of the knowledge. Knowledge itself, is, as I talked about earlier, is, you know, it changes with time. Its relevance rather could change with time, right? So somehow in our countries, it's often found that, you know, people teach some knowledge that may not be relevant anymore even within STEM, right? So today we have, as I said earlier, it's the fourth industrial revolution. There are things that matters the most, IoT, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, computer vision, material science, biotechnology, neuroscience, neurotechnology, IoT, and so on, right? There's a few other subjects that matters that we should often focus on. So the second thing I mentioned was being responsive, and that the world is changing very fast. And obviously the knowledge is changing very fast. So our educational system needs to be responsive to give us competitive advantage over the rest of the world. So being able to change your curriculum very fast, whether it's math, physics, technology, and there's things that we're not doing very fast. We have that old books in STEM that we've been teaching all the time. And since things have moved, things have changed, some of the teachers do not know how to use a 3D printer, or do not even know how to use, perhaps in some cases, Zoom and the like. So being responsive is clearly something very important. And then finally is being adaptability, and being predictive, I should say, because not everyone would get a job right after they finish school, right? And that getting a job right after they finish school means we already know what the market needs in science and technology, and that we were training them to go into those markets. Since we know for a fact that not everybody will get a job, we need to be predictive of what the job of the future will be, so we will create it. So we don't train people to actually get a job, but we also train them to create the job of the future. So, and I think these conditions, being contextual, responsive, and predictive are quite important for going forward. And then lastly, you talked about innovation. Therefore, education being one of those. The other part of innovation is R&D, research and development. So research and development is critical for disruptive innovation. And that research and development typically is done in higher education, tertiary education. And if you look the ranking in the world top engineering universities, you see that by far the American universities are leading, and then they have Asian universities, which also explain the recent growth in that part of the world. And then Africa doesn't show up until in terms of ranking university in STEM, it doesn't show until 250 with South Africa. So we are in the continent, we account for about a little bit more than 15% of the whole population. And our university do not rank in the top 250 in the whole world. Hence, clearly, this is a big barrier. It's a huge challenge to sparking innovation across the continent. So I feel like those are some of the challenges that we're facing today, and if we need to get over this hump and be a leading continent in engineering and science and STEM and innovation, those are the challenges one needs to address.
Thank you very much. I like the points on context, being contextual, being predictive, and being, is it responsive?
Yes.
Yeah, these 3 points really make a lot of sense for Africa going forward. And I also believe that also the structures that and the systems that we design, and talking about things like STEM education, necessarily have to be different in a way from other parts of the world in terms of like this barrier between institutions and society, or between institutions and, let's say, universities as an institution and industry as an institution, or government and industry, or government and universities. And then also all of these institutions and society. I think that we need to do a lot of work to break down some of these barriers so that different components talk to each other to really drive the kinds of solutions that we want to see. Yeah, I have another set of questions for you next, but you've actually answered some of these questions already in your previous answer, so I don't want to go there. But we have 2 questions from somebody in the chat, Dara, and therefore I'd like to invite them to ask the question themselves, and then we can run off this part of the program. So Dara, over to you.
Thank you very much
Would you like to turn on your camera if possible? But if not, don't worry, just go ahead.
All right. Yeah, so my question was that how can we solve parts and components for robotics and IoT in Africa? Because right now, most of the components we have, they come from China and they're very expensive. I live in Nigeria and I work as an IoT engineer. Because of the dollar rate, you have the price of components skyrocketing, and it's really crazy right now. My second question is, how do we increase the number of fab labs and mentorship opportunities for young people wanting to go into hardware and robotics? We see that a lot of people go into software because it's actually easier. You pick up your laptop and then get a course or get into a sort of fellowship and you are good to go with software, but it's not the same with hardware. So how do we, in Europe and the Americas, you have a lot of fab labs, you have a lot of mentorship opportunities. I see a lot of semiconductor companies, they're taking young graduates into their system, and they're doing mentorship, and a lot of them, after the mentorship 6 months, they become full-time staff. But you can hardly count the number of those kind of companies around Africa. Before you find one, you have to do a whole lot of work. I stay in Nigeria and I know that those are kind of opportunities, they don't come easily. So how do we increase that reach?
Excellent, very good question. Shall I answer this before or?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll try to answer. This seems to be a somewhat open-ended question. In terms of the component, it's quite a challenge because it's the same challenge you're facing is the same challenge I'm facing and people that I know who work in this field are facing, right? Which is how do you have access to components, whether it's electronic components or mechanical parts, right? Sometimes it could be as simple as a screw, a bolt and and a pulley, or really simple stuff. And then you might want to wait like a week, to get it to your place. So the question, what do you do? You don't hear me saying outright, let's go create the manufacturing processes to do it here, because I want to be careful a little bit, because these are businesses, right? If you start building electronic chips or mechanical parts, just consider it to be a business, and a business has a chance of succeeding as well as failing, right? And you want to be on the succeeding side of things, right? If your outright argument is, okay, let's start building our own chips and so on, you have to ensure that you have the competitive advantage of doing that. You will start, and then if you do not, your business would actually die, and then nothing happens, right? You lose money. And you could start making a chip, but you don't make it at a cost that's competitive enough to the China plus the shipment, then people will still go buy from there. Right? So what I'm saying is it's a great idea, I think, to see how do you locally build those things, but you have to do it in a competitive, keeping in mind competitive advantages. One way that seems to always work when it comes to competitive advantages is to do something that's novel. So instead of focusing on the part that's been done already, you do something else that adds value to that part. Then therefore you don't reinvent the wheel as you trying to make these chips which are being made in thousands and millions in China or other places where you might not be able to do it. So this is something just one has to keep in mind. Perhaps also the other solution is to work on the infrastructures to get those equipment here faster. Whether it's the logistics, whether it's the you have to come with a new transportation system, like the Hyperloop or something like that, or some ways, right? So this is added advantages. So you don't go ahead and do the same thing. For example, Elon Musk or somebody else who makes chips in the US doesn't say I don't have, or France doesn't say I don't have uranium, or I doesn't have this mineral. I'm just going to create that mineral in my country. It's not possible. They have to know that the only way to get that mineral is through collaborating with other countries. It doesn't stop them from working. So not having the chip or that, that Arduino chip should not stop you from, doing your work. And doesn't necessarily mean you have to build it too. If you build it and I can keep the competitive advantages, yes, go ahead and do it. So I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but there's a balance between that. And I think that goes the same for the mechanical parts too. And we're all suffering, especially when there is a shortage, is a problem in shipping or disturbance in that area. But ideally, yeah, we would love to see some local companies making some of this, but make sure we do it in a very competitive, way.
Then there was a second question about Fab Labs and mentorship opportunities for young people who want to go into hardware and robotics. How do we increase those?
Okay, I think one of the ways to include this is one of those chicken and egg question where do you, create the companies first and then have the company mentor them, or do you need to do the Fab Lab first, train the people so that they create the companies to mentor them? It's very challenging to some degree. Ideally, as you said, it would be nice if there are this really innovative companies, top companies out there in the continent or in your respective countries that would sponsor universities as well as program to build Fab Labs, right? But then it's the chicken and egg problem, because you need those Fab Labs in order to build those companies to do that, come back and do it. So where do we start? I think government can play an important role here. Quite honestly, it's hard to say, but it's the role of that government to do that. You pay your taxes and so on, and it's to use that public wealth and put it back to the well-being as well as the growth, development of its citizens. So one of the ways they could do that is to create these innovation centers and Fab Labs. So that's the most outright way of doing it, And hopefully, though, there are forward-minded people in your country or in my country who would think, maybe, it would be good for my industry to recruit future engineers and scientists to create these Fab Labs and then invest in those. But I don't have an answer really. It's just, I've seen across many countries where, in Rwanda, I guess, the government has, invested a lot. In Djibouti, where I worked a little bit, the government as well has invested. Senegal, we have, a couple of organisms based on the government who are invested in Fab Lab and innovation hubs to help. And then also the private sector, education of the private sector, I meant to say, could also play an important role. The like of myself, who opened a university and is providing such opportunities for Fab Lab opportunities for the youth. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned government and universities. Sometimes when you're in activist mode, you think that we can change the world and change everything, but actually you need the government to make the right policies and put in place strategies. In Ghana here too, yes, some progress has been made when it comes to expanding the innovation ecosystem, but I think that more needs to be done. And also when it comes to universities, yeah, there are also some interesting universities that are popping up. For example, here we have the Ashesi University, Academic City, and some other institutions that are popping up. And it's nice to see what you're doing in Senegal as well. Cutting edge stuff as far as education is concerned. Very, very important to change mindsets and the approach that we use. So I'm going to ask you my final question, which is somehow linked to some of the things that are emerging, but yeah, it's very important. Which is that if someone wants to get involved with your work, be it at Dakar American University of Science and Technology or PARC Robotics, how will they go? How can they go about it?
Okay. Well, and on the PARC, we welcome and with open arms to anybody who would want to, support the initiative and take part of it. It's a decentralized, somewhat program where different countries, we just basically organize it as like perhaps the head of the PARC, but already there are a few countries who have taken their own initiative and have taken everything we built, whether it's the competition field, our logistics, our network, our partners, and then to replicate them in their respective countries, and create what we refer to the national robotics competition, right? And I've taken part in one of those in Djibouti, and I think Zimbabwe is, if Ada, you could correct me if I'm wrong, is doing one, and I think a few other countries are interested in. I'm sure Senegal will be doing one this year, and the PARC will come in and support and help, give you everything you need, logistics, know-how, connections, and partnerships, so that you could go ahead and take off and work on it. What we would like to do is to have this thing decentralized as much as possible, so they become autonomous and have their own autonomy, and we still somewhat have some sense of community though, where we work together and communicate and help each other. But also there are ways you could directly work with us. We have I can speak more about that, but we have committees for organization of the Pan-African Robotics Competition. These are mostly volunteers who come together and spend their time working on it, and some of that some of the volunteering also will come with potentially like a ticket to travel, hotels and all those things that you need, so you don't have to spend any of your money in volunteering to PARC. And we also have, besides volunteering, we have also people who actually help develop some of the technology we're using, and they are paid. A few ones I could list of is people who take care of our social media. We have people who work on developing softwares and so on. So there are opportunities there as well. At the Dakar American University of Science and Technology, what we would, it's the university. So, if you're interested in it, feel free to reach out to me. We do also have a couple of companies in Senegal around the area of robotics. And I know Evan was at the competition before, and I'm probably going to talk to him more after. But so there are opportunities for those who are interested in, potential jobs in, whether it's engineering jobs or robotics, mechanical engineering, robotics, electrical engineering. There's opportunities there as well. And we are currently growing and recruiting. Recently, we started a startup about a year and a half ago on designing teleoperated autonomous robot, a semi-autonomous robot rather. And so we are growing on that company, and we're still recruiting for robotics engineers and scientists. Yeah. But if you have also any ideas you would like to entertain or anything you would like to get our input, feel free to reach out, and then we're more than happy to discuss.
Yeah, this is wonderful. I mean, you're clearly looking for people who are into robotics and engineering, so I don't know, people like me probably not part of it. But on a more serious note, I think, yeah, definitely it looks like a lot of wonderful opportunities for people around Africa, and which also means that they can, study hard in school, build their skills, and then also tap into PARC and Dakar American University ecosystem to kind of like get their careers to the next level. So that's really wonderful to know. Dr. Sidy Ndao, thank you very much for making time with us today. It's been a very fun conversation. I could easily continue on and on. And at JOGL Africa, I think that we definitely would love to collaborate and work with you more in the future going forward. So I know you're busy, but I hope your doors will be open to us. We'll see.
Yeah, anything for the well-being of the continent.
Yeah, because I think that you guys are working on lots of exciting stuff, and that's really what we want to be able to facilitate. So, yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so much. Many thanks to Dr. Ndao. Now we want to talk about a little bit more about PARC, and so we have Ada Tapili, who is a coordinator for PARC, Pan-African Robotics Competition. She will share a bit more about PARC itself, the details of PARC, and what's going to happen in 2022. They have a competition coming up in 2022. And then we have also the opportunity to meet some previous PARC participants and who will share with us some of the work that they've done. Over to you, Ada.
Yes. Oh, this was very, very good. conversation. Because of the time, I will just briefly talk about PARC and give you the link so you can learn more on our website, so that the students will also have enough time to share their experiences. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Can you see?
Yes.
So, as Sidy mentioned, PARC is an annual competition for teams in Africa and its diaspora. So the goal of PARC is to inspire youth, promote STEM education, and also challenge them to use science and technology to address societal challenges. So this year, the competition is based on sustainable impact. Students will be challenged to develop solutions around climate change adaptation, hunger, access to water, sanitation, and transportation. So they will receive robot kits they have to compete with. So at the end of the competition, they will also, they can keep their robot kits, their robots. And also this year, we have the chance to have like 2 spots for 2 of our leagues to participate to the world competition, VEX World competitions. So this year, the competition will be in Dakar, in Senegal. Dakar is a beautiful city, and there is amazing people and innovator there you can meet. So part of the challenge, we have several league in our competitions. So the first league is Tech League. They are basically middle school students between 11 to 15 years old. They will work on how to improve access to drinkable water and also sanitation. So this is their game boards. We also have Start League. They're high school students. They will be only focusing on climate change, but especially how Africa can adapt to the impact of climate change. We have makers. Makers, they are our entrepreneurs. So they have to use design thinking and the whole system and life cycle thinking approach to develop solution on how we can eradicate hunger in Africa. At the end, we have our engineers. So engineers, they are university students and young professionals like you. The competition for the engineers is in 2 phases. The first is a virtual competition. So it will be an online simulation. So the team have to develop a software using ROS, and the top 10 of the teams, the top 10 on the competition will receive robots to participate to the physical competition in Senegal in July. And we are really excited about that. So beside the robotic competition, this year we are hosting the Youth Forum. So the goal of the Youth Forum is for youth to share their talent, their culture, interact with each other, network, create a huge community where they can really innovate and create businesses or solution, anything that can really improve Africa and improve the way people are living and impact positively Africans. So there will be students panel discussions, special presentation from innovators. So youth can present their innovation, their solution, their businesses, anything that they develop, and also they can discuss around topics that's really matter to them. Okay, so you can apply to PARC. You can go on our website, parkrobotic.org. If you have any question, you can feel free to just email us. We recently created a Slack group where you can interact with us more, ask questions. We will share resources and also real-time communicating on the competition. You will find the link to the Slack channel on the website, and you can find more information about the competition, how you can participate and everything. Feel free to share with your network, your friend, your family, any school who can really represent their countries, everything. So right now, I'm just going to leave the student to share their experiences. The first student is Ivan. He participated to PARC 2021 Engineering League, and they actually won. So can you tell us more about your experience, how PARC really impacted you, and the project you worked on?
So the invitation to join PARC was, I saw that as an opportunity to first grow my skills, become better, and see how I can apply what I've been learning in a much more in a better setting. Also see how my skills stack against others. So I applied with another teammates, another colleague, and so over the period of the last year we had 2 phases, which was basically the virtual one, and then we had a simulation phase, and then we had the physical robot phase. So during the simulation phase, the idea was to develop software to complete the mission objectives. And the mission objectives, there were 3 mission objectives. The first was to be able to navigate around a city block using just a pavement walk. It was just a pavement walk. And then the second task was to be able to cross the streets basically by following the traffic lights. So you only cross when the traffic light is green. You don't cross when it's red or any other color. So that was that. And then there was also the navigation task, which was basically to navigate within a cluttered environment to get to a specific target. So the whole thing was centered around the concept of a robot delivering a package maybe within a city block. So that was basically the task I did. And getting to that point, I'd never done anything of that skill before, especially with ROS and all those other frameworks. So and I had to. It was a really good opportunity for me to, quickly knock it down and get a few experience and know how things like computer vision, web, robot navigation, how to quickly tell the robot to go here to there while avoiding obstacles. Also how to, especially the part about joining the doing a pavement walk. It seemed really simple because as humans we do that without any effort. But getting to the challenge and using computer vision to detect the lanes and then forming solutions, maybe some algorithmic solutions and mathematical solutions for how to actually determine if you are within the lane, how to move back to the lane if you somehow go off the lane. It would prove really challenging and tasking. But ultimately, through grit and desire, we were able to come up with solutions that really helped us complete the goals. It was really amazing because this was something we hadn't done before, and then to be able to get the skills within a quick short time and be able to complete the challenge was really tasking. And during the second phase, we were challenged to get our code running on the physical robots that was in Senegal. Unfortunately, because of COVID was really an issue last year. We weren't able to have a physical challenge. Instead, we were supposed to work remotely from our respective countries and locations and control a robot in Senegal to complete a task. We had a couple of test rounds, but unfortunately, we had a couple of problems, mostly internet issues connecting to the physical robot. So we were able, our team was able to run a couple of tests, but it didn't go as well as we hoped it would go, mostly because I've talked about the internet issues, but then also because something that was a really good learning opportunity was knowing the difference between what the physical robot and what a simulation is. Because simulations provide ideal environments for your robot to run in. So, and I'm sure that all of us will agree that the world, the state of the world is not always ideal, right? So it was a really bit of a hurdle having to, because our code was been written for this perfect environment that had the pavement to be perfectly white, the traffic lights appearing a certain bright, nice color. You're expecting to be in a certain shape and form, but the physical robot, the robot could be in any state at all. The environment could be, while it tries to, while it's modeled after the simulation, it's still you realize because of real world differences, there are certain challenges that you need to overcome before solution that works in simulation could now work in. So the task now was to basically get all this same code working on this physical robots, and it was really tasking, but it was a good learning effort, because then we realized that, okay, this is what we have to do if we want to get the robots that we works well in simulation to work in the physical robots. And then this is what we have to do, this is what we have to know, and this is what we have to change to get the work on that, both in physical and in simulation. So overall, to summarize my learning experience, yeah, I think that it was a great opportunity, and it's actually played a major part in me actually transitioning full time into a software developer. So I call it current role as a software developer at the company. So overall, I have a positive experience with the entire program. I have a positive experience with the entire program, and I believe that anybody that joins up and signs up to be to join this competition, with even as little learning experience as you know or something, it's a good opportunity for you to to up your skills, and learn a lot more, and participate in a good challenge and see how your skills stack up. Thank you. Over to you, Malick.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Evans. So let's have the second student. I think it's Malick.
Hello, everyone again. I'm Malick Kassé, student in robotics, videographer in robotics, and member of the national robotics team of Mali. I participated in PARC 2019 in the makers category with the team makers ACO Mali team, and we won the second place in the competition. The theme at the time was to create a smart city, so our team used the stages of design thinking to be able to opt for a prize during the competition. As part of our participation in the PARC 2019 competition on the smart city, we went out and went to see how our Bamako compatriots live in their different neighborhoods. We traveled through several neighborhoods, namely the working class neighborhoods of Bamako. We asked Bamako residents questions about what they think of the immediate environment. They gave us several answers, namely garbage in the neighborhoods was not collected on the time. This lead to the formation of piles of illicit garbage in the places, open gutters or gutters abound in the city and are very poorly maintained. Proliferation of mosquitoes in several working class neighborhoods due to non-evacuated wastewater. Many foodstuffs are produced using chemical fertilizers. People have lost the notion of agriculture without chemicals. The green spaces at the level of the municipalities are insufficient in number, and the few that exist are very poorly maintained, and many other things. So let's see. There is only one park in Bamako. We are 4 million inhabitants here, but there is only one park. Has innovative solutions to those problems. We try to propose. I'm not very good in English, so sorry. To these problems, we have 12 of proposing fireplaces, replicable green natural spaces on our communal scale in the city. We call our concept the Yiriso. Our green natural home Yiriso in the city is a vegetable garden consisting of 2 large parties, namely a park that is to say in our context a green space for relaxation, and a vegetable garden where we will do urban agriculture without chemicals. Without going too much into the details of the project under development, we had to present the project to the mayor of the district of Bamako, who validated our proposal for the USO space. It supported the fact that this kind of space is born for the city of Bamako, because the Bamakos are really lacking in green spaces. The returns to chemical-free agriculture is beneficial for certain social strata. He mentioned it. After that, we went to residents of the popular district where the ACO is located. We met one of the elders who said he was very satisfied with the USO space that we proposed. Personally, I can only thank the initiators of PARC, because PARC impacted my life, not only professional, but also social. I wish a good continuation to enlarge the community. Thank you for listening to me. It was Malick from Mali. And sorry, because I'm not very good in English. I don't know if you understand.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Malick. Well, I understood most of what you've said about using robotics to deal with urbanization issues. So you're talking of green spaces, urban agriculture, sustainability. And it's very nice that you also linked your project to the municipal authorities so they can give you feedback, because then it means you are developing a solution that really works for the community that people can tap into. So yeah, congratulations and good job on what you're doing so far. Maybe next time we have to do the French version of the program, and then you'll be 100% comfortable. But yeah, fantastic job, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come and share what you are doing with us as well. Thank you so much. Today's program has really stimulated my mind, and I'm sure the minds of other people following, as far as integrating robotics into everyday activities is concerned. So we'll just say a very big thank you to Dr. Sidy Ndao from Pan-African Robotics Competition. Big thank you to Ada, who made it possible for us to be able to have this meeting and have this program, and also for coordinating everybody for the program. Thank you so much. I just also want to say thank you to my colleague Joy, who's also supported to get all the events and activities running. I hope you have a brilliant rest of the week. So when the videos are ready, we'll post it in a meetup and we'll share with all our partners, and then we'll also do a blog post about this. And so watch out for our next JOGL Africa event next week. Watch out for our next JOGL Africa event, which will be happening next month, and then we'll send you all the invitations as well. Thank you, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye-bye.